Let's do an all twins daily delivery debate today with Velle Neal III. He is in Florida, Fort Myers for spring training. Velle, are you sad you missed what turned into the storm of the century here? We got like a foot of snow in Minnesota.
No, actually, I did catch that because I left Wednesday morning after the Tuesday storm. So um, it was treacherous. And my sister took me to the airport, and then she promptly drove to her school to find out that they had canceled school that day. So then she drove back home and promptly got stuck in my driveway.
Oh
So
no.
we I had to deal with it even when I wasn't at home.
Well, for some reason that makes me feel better. I thought you had missed it entirely. You
No,
caught a piece of it, but you did escape, and now it's probably beautiful in Florida. You've gotten
plus
a chance to.
I had a 2 hour delay trying to get out of Minneapolis.
Oh man.
And then I had to change planes in Houston, and we got delayed 90 minutes there because the pilots discovered that one of the tires was shredded when they got to the gate. So they had to jack the plane right there and replace the tire. And I've never seen an airplane jack before.
No, that sounds complicated. I'm glad they figured that out though before they tried to land it later. That's probably a good thing, or tried to take off. So better to catch those things early if you are going to have to be delayed at all. We're not just here to talk about travel stories, though. We're going to talk about the Twins. We're going to do our whole debate segment around three things, three subjects around the Twins. Now, you wrote about them today. You're saying no reason to decry their sense of optimism. You're saying, hey, their optimism is well founded. I'm not so sure in some cases, but we're going to talk about it. Number one, Buxton, Correa, and Lewis. Give me your reasons why we should be optimistic about those three guys.
Well, first of all, they all are talented, and when they're on the field, they put up numbers. Now, the problem is that how often they have been on the field. I got to think a couple things here. One, Buxton's had two relatively decent off seasons where he hasn't had to do much rehab, especially this past off season. That bodes well for him, and he's in good mood and good spirits. In camp, I saw him briefly today. Correa was largely healthy until this plantar fasciitis has popped up in each of the last 2 years. I don't see how that's going to be. Hopefully, that's not a recurring thing. I've had plantar, and I never had it again after I dealt with it in 1993, I want to say. So hopefully, Carlos has kicked the habit with now that he's had it once in each foot. There's been a history of Minnesota athletes. Let's see. Wally Zerbiak, Shannon Stewart, Michael
Williams.
Michael Williams. A couple other. I think Martin Cordova had plantar fasciitis, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
And all those guys, it never was. I think Williams ended up having surgery, but the other guys recovered and never had a recurring problem. So I'm going to bet on Carlos being in the lineup 130 times this year at least. And Lewis, I think Lewis is the biggest wild card of the three because he's had a bunch of nagging things through the years, knee surgeries and other issues pop up on him. I think he feels like he's out from the other side of this, just from having the last 5 years dealing with the COVID year and then knee surgery there, and then another knee surgery. Frankly, because the Twins put him in center field when he wasn't used to playing out there. So I would be most concerned about Lewis staying healthy of the three, to be honest with you. So I think that those guys are going to be factors this year. And even if two of the three could stay on the field for 120, 130 games, it's going to be a lot to the Twins offense. Because all the stuff that went on with this team, they still were 10th in the league in runs scored last year.
Yeah.
When you think about how they struggled in run scoring situations, like how they floundered down the stretch, they still were 10th in runs scored. So it doesn't take a monumental leap from them to all of a sudden have to play 150 games a year to improve their chances. It would definitely help, and no one would argue against that. But if they just get to 130, 125 a piece, that would mean a lot, I think, for the team.
I don't disagree with that. I'm worried, though, that we keep saying if these three guys can be healthy, and before it was if Buxton can be healthy, then we added Correa to that mix, and now Lewis obviously has had his injury history. It's hard to say that they will be because the history suggests they won't be. So that's concern number one. Concern number two for me is that Royce Lewis was pretty bad down the stretch last year. I don't know what version of Royce Lewis we're getting, even if he is healthy. Now, I think we know what version relative, there's a range, but we know what we're getting from Carlos Correa if he's healthy. We know what Byron Buxton can do, generally speaking, if he's healthy. He's got enough of a track record. Royce Lewis doesn't, though, and he is such an integral part potentially of this offense that I'm still concerned about throwing so much of the weight behind those big three.
Well, I talked to Royce today actually, and that came up as part of our conversation. And Royce is definitely aware of that. And we talked about last year because I was hearing at the ballpark that Royce kept complaining about how he was tired, how he was worn down. And so my question to him today was, how much was that physical and how much was that mental? And
Yeah.
he said it's mostly physical. And when he wanted to just jump at a pitch and swing, he just couldn't fire, and he just felt late on everything. And then we talked about because I said, sometimes the mind has to override what the body's trying to tell a person in these situations. And he agreed, and he thought he went through that point too, where he was able to conquer to a certain extent to when he hit critical mass. So I just think it was a product of the year he had. We looked fantastic at the beginning of the year, and then had injuries, and then probably was putting stress on himself to come back. And then there was a weird thing about moving to second base. I still think it's probably a little more mental in him than what he's letting on. But I think he just kind of cratered there down the stretch, and he knows it too. So once again, I think he's going to come out on he's going to come out on the other side of this better because he's been through it and he can make the mental adjustments.
Well, time will tell. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt, but I'm still concerned about the big three, especially because Royce last year, basically as soon as he said I don't do slumps, he had the biggest slump of his career. So
Yeah, that's true.
maybe tell him don't say that this year. Don't say that this year, Royce. Just play your game. Do what you got to do. Question two, you wrote about rotation depth as part of kind of your arrival at camp. On paper, I agree there is some reason for optimisms. Give me your reasons, and then I'm going to kind of pick at them a little bit, I think.
Well, I think the Twins have a solid top three starters. I'm not saying they have Johnson and Schilling at the top of the rotation, but
Right.
they've got a guy in Pablo Lopez who is I think you can make an argument for him being one of the top 20, 25 starters in the league. Actually, in rankings going into 2024, he was actually in the top 15. That's how far he had gotten up. And I think he I think he won 15 games last year, and you'll take that from your lead dog in the pack there. I'm a big Joe Ryan fan, and there's been stretches where he has pitched as well or a little bit better than Pablo. And he had a weird injury last year that doesn't exist to the teres major in his shoulder. The only reason I know there's a teres major is because I tore my rotator cuff and had to be told by the doctor that I had to strengthen the teres major to replace the part that was torn in my shoulder. So I know about the teres major. And Bailey Ober. And some of Bailey Ober's metrics were just as good, a little bit better than Pablo's last year. So, and I was looking at pitching rankings this year. Pablo's in the top 20, Ryan's in the top 25, and then Ober's in the 30s. And they got three guys they can rely on. Plus, the guys they had to rely on from the minors: Simeon, Woods, Richardson, David Festa, and Zebby Matthews all got good experience last year. With Simeon keeping his head above water, Festa and Zebby had to be coddled a little bit because they were being fast-tracked from the minors, and they had to watch their innings limits and everything. And I also pointed out in my column that players develop there's different development paths for each player, and you don't know who's going to take off from the experience they got last year, or who may just stay the same. And there's a chance someone may regress. So I was told today, though, Zebby looks great. All his pitches are alive. There's a lot of optimism about him going into the year this year. And Festa's added, I think, a sinker to go with his arsenal. He's got a lot of things going for him. And I think when you look at that, plus the wild card that is Chris Paddock, I think if they have the issues like they had last year, they've got people who are better equipped to deal with being fill-ins than they did a year ago. That's why I like the rotation.
but they're the same guys. The guys that were fill-ins last year are the fill-ins this year. It's Festa, it's Matthews, and I get that they've had a handful of more than a handful of starts. They were thrust into the spotlight last year. They had to pitch, and I get that they look good in camp. Everything's happy now, but I'm still concerned about this. I think Paddock is depth unless they trade him. I agree with you that their top three is very good. I don't think their starting pitching depth is as robust as we think. I think there's still a lot of if with the pitching depth and less proven depth than they might like to have.
This sounds like a indictment on the Pohlads for not bringing in good pitchers during the off season.
They never do. They haven't for a while. I shouldn't say they never do.
All these guys are in the mid-20s to late 20s. They haven't even hit their primes yet. So there's upside with this rotation group. So if you even get like a 10% improvement across the board, that's going to mean a lot for this group here. And I'm excited about the next wave, the Andrew Morrises and the Marco Reyes, who were in the queue this year to be called up if they really have to dig that deep down, that far down to get help if there's a bunch of injuries again. Hopefully there isn't. Hopefully it's like a couple years ago when I think the starting five made like 83% of their starts the season or something like that. So I think there's reason to be optimistic about the rotation.
I agree there's reasons to be optimistic. I'm just not quite as optimistic as other people seem to be. I'm just a little bit concerned that it's not quite as deep as we think it is. Question number 3, the bullpen. Again, this bullpen's been great on paper the last, couple of years. We go into the season like, hey, the Twins have the expected wins, whatever it is, the expected win probability way up there, and then they turn out to be pretty average. They get injuries, everybody gets hurt, somebody underperforms. I think this could be a strength of this team, but I don't think it's as good as the advanced numbers are suggesting it might be.
Well, the advanced numbers are suggesting that the Twins got the best bullpen in baseball.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Even if they're off a little bit, they could still be 5th or 6th or 7th and still be pretty good. So, and if everybody pitches up to their capabilities, then it could be, up there in the top 2 or 3 in the league. So I think there's reasons. I think there's enough reason there to think that they could be a force. And I think part of the reason for the late season slide was that Rocco was starting Zevi and David Festa and actually pulled Simeon for the rotation for because he reached the innings limit. Right. I think because those guys are only going like basically one time through the order before going into the bullpen. I think the bullpen ended up getting stretched a little thin toward the end of the year. And that kind of led to part of the blow up as well. So plus, since I think the rotation is going to have more guys able to get to the 5th inning or maybe pitch a couple outs in the 6th, maybe face batters in the 6th.
There we dream.
That's a big step there because the average major league start is now 5 1/3 innings. So I get that. But I think you got to like the Twins' chances of winning games with this group if they're leading after 6 innings. I talked to Louis Varland today, and I actually talked to Louis Varland and Brock Stewart today. Louis did not admit that he's going to be a reliever, but all the numbers are pointing to that. How he's being used is saying you're a reliever this year, and he's ready for either role. Brock Stewart felt healthy, and that's the best thing for him. He's working on his control. He throws five different pitches, so he's got to get all 5 of those harnessed. But his arm is just as live. And if he's in that mix, that's going to mean a lot. Now, I mentioned Justin Topa. I had Justin Topa mentioned in my column. I had to remove it after he left to start yesterday. So hopefully that's the only problem they have in the bullpen this year. If they get a healthy Brock Stewart, he is as good as any reliever in that bullpen. And that's going to be a big plus. And they still are led by the big 3, which is Duran and Griffin Jacks and Cole Sands, who all pitch. Who 2 of those guys were. Duran was good, Jacks was excellent, and Sands was very good by the end of the year. And they got 3 guys who at least hang your hat on. If you get these other guys to step in, didn't mention Jorge Alcala. Now you got guys who don't have to pitch high leverage situations because you got other guys to do that. So I just think the things are set up for this pitching staff to be really good.
I'm being a bit of a devil's advocate here, but I agree with you generally. I'm not ready to put Cole Sands into a big 3 yet, though. I need to see more high leverage Cole Sands before we say he's part of a big 3.
I think he's on the Griffin Jackson development plan. I don't know if his sweeper is going to be as devastating as
Right.
Jackson's is, but the second half of the season he pitched effectively, and um, I could see him being a seventh inning guy. I don't know if you want him in the eighth yet, but still maybe a couple looks here and there in that role. He can grow into it. So in this day and age, you got to have a deep bullpen, and I think the Twins have the arms for that. Knock on wood against any further injuries.
Yes.
But the thing is, I do think they're going to need another lefty before the season's over. I like Danny Coulomb. I like him as a second reliever, to be honest with you. He's going to be the number one reliever. My sleeper pick for the year is in the minor league system. His name is Connor Praliff. And if they finally give up on him being a starter and have him focus on being a reliever, he could get through to the majors pretty quick because he throws a ridiculous slider and has a good fastball. And health has kept him from throwing a lot of innings in the minors, which to me is screaming, make me a reliever. So, and I think you're going to see him before the year's over. And that would be another good development for this bullpen.
It would. Before I let you go, Lavelle, what else have you been doing down there so far? What else have you been hearing?
Well, today was the first day I was actually on campus to check
Yeah.
on the team, and there was, a couple bullpen sessions, and guys got. I was told this is one of the lighter days, workout days of spring, because tomorrow's a split squad, and half the team is going to Port Charlotte to play the Rays, and only half is home here. I think against the Braves. And oh, by the way, that Rays game is also the annual Rays Twins Wives softball game, which will take place.
Okay.
Following the regular game. So the newlyweds, Louis Varland and his new wife, she's a great athlete. She's going to play in the game, and everybody's going to be up there watching their wives play. So it's a big deal. I think they raised some money for charity as well. After that, there's a good chance there's going to be some cuts coming up here. So we're going to see this roster start to take shape. As I walked past someone in the clubhouse, they were like, "You picked the right time to come here because we're starting to get into the meat of spring training. You're going to see this roster come into shape, and guys, you won't see that many guys wearing number 84 popping up in the eighth and ninth innings." I said, "Good. I'm glad to hear that." So this next week or so is going to be pretty interesting.
Well, like I talked about this with Phil Miller like a week or two ago, that there's just not a ton of positional battles. First base is a little bit unsettled, but we don't go to spring training and then there's like 5 jobs open anymore. It's a little different than maybe it has been in some years.
Plus, the Twins refuse to just break away from some of their prospects. So you got all these guys that come up through the system that are still trying to find their niche. Like I've got Edouard Julien on the road trip to Port Charlotte tomorrow. So he's in my crosshairs for a column for Saturday's paper. So I'm curious to see how he's looking. And then I also have Jose Miranda, who I was expecting him to be the first baseman until Ty France came into the Twins' lives.
Right.
Now I think Miranda's going to be more in the DH split role. And I think Miranda's a sleeper guy because I think that stretch he had in June and July when he was carrying the team, I think you saw glimpses of what he can do at the plate with that bat. And he's hitting his peak years, and I just think he's primed for a good year where he hits near close to 300. I don't know how much power he's going to hit for, but he's a great contact hitter, and he can hit line drives, and he can be a force, I think. So I think this is going to be a big year for him. So I'm kind of watching for him tomorrow as well as a column target for Saturday's paper. So
awesome, Lavelle. Enjoy the weather. Enjoy avoiding watching all the snow melt here. It's going to be gone pretty soon at least. And we will catch up with you again next week.
Sounds good.